You want to act tough? Felix Escobar growled, stepping into my path beneath a chandelier large enough to crush us both. Then prove it. Now, any ordinary waitress would have frozen. Any undercover agent pretending to be a waitress should have backed away quietly. But me? All I could think about was how badly I wanted to wipe that smug, gold-ringed arrogance right off his tattooed chest. Maybe that says something about me. Maybe it says even more about him. I have always believed trouble knows who to look for. It has a way of sniffing out the people who refuse to break. And tonight, trouble picked me. Lucky for trouble, I have been trained to hit back. Before we go any further, you should know something. Once I start telling you what really happened in that ballroom, under those chandeliers, with the city's most feared man dare me to swing, you are not going to want to stop listening. The truth is wild, messy, explosive, and it all began a few hours earlier, before Felix Escobar cornered me, before the guests gasped, before my covers started cracking. On the night, I walked into the Aurelius Hotel with one simple mission: stay quiet, stay invisible, stay alive. That was the plan. Then Felix arrived, and everything went wrong. So, let me start from the beginning. My name is Catalea Boyd. You and I do not know each other well yet, but by the end of this story, you will feel like we survived a fire together. I am talking to you directly because if you heard this night from anyone else, you would think they exaggerated. They would not be lying. The night really was as insane as it sounds. I showed up at the Aurelius Hotel pretending to be the kind of woman who apologizes when someone else bumps into her. White shirt, black vest, hair tied back, a tray in one hand, and a fake name tag on my chest. Just another server weaving through the shine and sparkle of the city's most expensive ballroom. In reality, I was on assignment, undercover, embedded, hunting a network I had chased across 3 countries. They operated behind charity galas and business conferences, and tonight's event was one of their favorite playgrounds. My job was simple: observe, listen, gather intel, do not draw attention. I walked into the ballroom, and the first thing I noticed was how unreal everything looked. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead like frozen fireworks. 1,000 tiny reflections danced across polished marble floors. Men in tailored suits clinked glasses. Women in silk gowns moved like they floated. The music was soft enough to vanish into whispers. Nobody saw me. That was perfect. Invisibility is an art, and I had mastered it. Or so I thought. Before guests arrived, the staff whispered among themselves while polishing cutlery and straightening tablecloths. They talked about one name in particular, Felix Escobar. They spoke of him like he was a rumor that sometimes materialized just to ruin someone's week. A man with influence that made politicians swallow their pride and businessmen swallow their fear. The kind of figure who walked into a place and shifted the air. I pretended not to listen, but every word sharpened my awareness. Felix Escobar was connected to the network I was tracking. If he showed up, the night would become a lot more complicated. Still, the plan stayed the same. Stay silent. Stay in the crowd. Blend. If you're enjoying this story, please hit the subscribe button and drop your comments. For the first hour, I thought I nailed it. I moved from table to table unnoticed, collecting small pieces of overheard conversations. Names. Schedules. Locations. Nothing major, but enough to stitch together later. Then the atmosphere changed. It started subtle. A hush. A ripple through the guests as if a cold breeze had passed through the room. People straightened up without realizing it. Conversations paused. Even the band faltered for a split second. Felix had arrived. He stepped in like he owned the hotel. Tattoos curled beneath the cuffs of his tailored suit. Heavy gold chains rested on his chest. Rings glinted on every other finger. His stride was slow and confident, the kind that told you he feared no living soul. And the worst part? The room accepted it. They parted for him as if he were royalty. I kept my eyes down, but my pulse climbed. This man was dangerous. Not chaotic. Not unpredictable. Worse, he was controlled. Intentional. Calculated. The predator who did not attack unless he meant it. Every instinct screamed at me to avoid crossing paths, which is exactly why fate shoved me directly into his. I had just turned toward the center aisle when someone brushed my shoulder from behind. My tray shifted, and I stepped sideways to steady myself. My foot landed exactly where Felix Escobar chose to walk. He stopped inches from me. The guests closest to us froze. Staff members stiffened. All of them waited for me to cower and apologize. That is what everyone did in front of him. I did not. I simply looked at him. That was not part of the plan, but neither was getting shoved into his path. My reaction surprised everyone nearby, even him. His eyes scanned me slowly, not with disgust, but curiosity, as if he could not decide whether I was brave, stupid, or both. Most people stared at him like he was a storm. I stared at him like he was a man trying too hard to look like thunder. He smirked. Most people bowed. I did not. Most people stepped back. I held my ground. And that was the moment everything changed. Felix took a step closer. His voice dropped low, so only I could hear him. "You are not afraid of me." I did not answer. Silence was safer. Or it should have been. He let out a short laugh, amused, intrigued, testing me now. He shifted, blocking my path, blocking my mission, blocking my exit. The guests watched. Some whispered. They sensed something shifting but could not name it. And I felt it too. The night had tilted. Felix leaned in. His smile sharpened. His voice wrapped around me like a challenge he knew I could not walk away from. "You want to act tough? Prove it." And that was the moment the plan I came in with died. Everything that happened next began right there, under those glittering chandeliers, beneath the weight of every eye in the ballroom, with the most feared man in the city daring me to show him exactly who I really was. For a moment after Felix said those words, everything in the ballroom stopped breathing. Music faded into nothing. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses hovered halfway to lips. Every guest, every staff member, every person in that glittering room stared at the same impossible sight. Felix Escobar, the man who made politicians stutter and criminals kneel, had just raised his fists at a waitress. At me. It was absurd. It was dangerous. It was the one thing I could not allow. My heart hammered against my ribs, demanding I choose which version of myself to be. The obedient server who blended into crowds, or the woman I had been trained to become. The undercover agent had rules. Do not draw attention. Do not break cover. Do not escalate. The fighter inside me had other rules. Do not fold. Do not fear. Do not let any man test your strength without consequences. Those two parts of me crashed together as Felix stepped closer. His fists rose higher. The guests leaned in, horrified but unable to look away. A few gasped softly. Some held their breath. Hotel security stood near the walls, frozen with uncertainty. They knew who Felix was. Stopping him was not as simple as walking over and asking him to behave. I felt eyes pressing against my back. I felt the air tightening around us. And even though I was supposed to stay invisible, I knew that shrinking now would mark me as prey, not just to Felix, but to every watching thread in this room. So I did the only thing I could. I shifted my feet and squared my stance. It was small and quiet, so subtle most people would not notice, but anyone trained in combat would see it instantly. Balance centered, weight lowered, hands relaxed but ready. A stance not of fear, but precision. Felix's eyes sparked with new interest. He threw the first strike. It came fast, sharper than I expected for a man known more for intimidation than technique. A straight jab aimed at my jaw. If I had been the woman I pretended to be, it would have landed. Hard. But I wasn't her. I tilted my head and let the punch slice through empty air. My movement was smooth and controlled, not dramatic, not flashy. Efficient, the kind that came from hours of training behind closed doors where mistakes were not allowed. A ripple went through the ballroom. A few guests flinched as if the punch had been aimed at them. Felix blinked, thrown off that I had evaded him so easily. He stepped forward again, ready to follow up, but this time I moved first. I flicked a counterstrike toward his ribs. Quick, sharp, not enough to injure, just enough to sting. Enough to reveal that I was no trembling waitress caught in the wrong place. My knuckles grazed his side. Felix exhaled sharply. The room erupted in whispers. Who is she? What is she doing? Is she crazy? Did she just hit Felix Escobar? It felt like every breath in the ballroom belonged to someone else. Heat rushed through my body. My instincts sharpened. I saw Felix's posture change. His shoulders rose. His jaw locked. His pride snapped in half. He escalated. With a low growl, he lunged, trying to overpower me with sheer force. It was the kind of move that worked on most people. Not me. I stepped sideways, hooked my foot around his ankle, and redirected his momentum. The guest gasped as his feet left the ground for a split second. Then Felix hit the marble floor. The sound echoed like a drop weight. I moved before he could react. I planted a knee beside his hip, pinning him down with trained precision. My hand pressed his shoulder to keep him grounded but not harmed. I needed control, not attention. Definitely not chaos. His chest rose and fell beneath me, heavier breaths each time. His eyes searched mine, not with anger, with something entirely different. Recognition, understanding. And then, to the shock of every witness, he laughed. A low, breathless laugh that felt like it came from deep inside him. He raised his head slightly to look at me better. There you are. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't a threat. It was something like admiration mixed with curiosity he could not hide. I should have walked away. I should have released him and vanished into the staff hallway. But I was frozen, not physically, but mentally, try to understand the shift in his expression. Felix leaned closer, his voice dropping to a level only I could hear. Good. Maybe you are strong enough to survive what is coming. The words slid into me like a cold blade. They did not feel like a compliment. They felt like a warning wrapped in prophecy. And he said them as if he already knew something I didn't. Before I could respond, movement erupted around us. His guards rushed forward, hands at their jackets, ready to grab me, restrain me, break me, or worse. I tensed, preparing to fight again, even though I knew I could not win against all of them. But Felix raised a hand sharply, still pinned beneath me. Stop. Every guard froze instantly. Felix looked up at me with a strange flicker in his eyes, something almost amused, almost impressed, but layered with a meaning I could not read. He nodded once toward my grip, silently telling me to release him. I hesitated for half a heartbeat, then pushed off him and stepped back. The guard surged forward again, but Felix snapped his fingers once and they halted as if pulled by an invisible chain. He rose to his feet slowly, watching me the entire time. He straightened his jacket, brushed imaginary dust from his sleeves, and gave a small, crooked smile. The guests around us whispered even louder now. Their confusion hung in the air like fog. No one understood what had just happened, and I wished I did. Felix leaned in just enough for only me to hear one last line. We will talk soon. Then he turned away as if we had simply exchanged business cards instead of blows. His guards closed around him. The music resumed shakily. Guests pretended they had not witnessed something impossible. Staff hurried to restore order. But none of that mattered. I stood frozen with one truth settling heavy in my chest. This mission was not what I thought it was. Felix Escobar did not just test me. He recognized me. Or at least, he recognized something about me. Something he was not supposed to see. And whatever he meant by what is coming did not feel like a threat against him. It felt like a storm waiting outside, already moving toward all of us. For the first time since accepting this assignment, I understood the danger. Tonight was only the beginning. I expected the aftermath to hit me fast. Arrest, suspension, extraction, something. Any undercover agent who just slammed a notorious crime boss onto marble in front of 200 witnesses should have been dragged out by our own handlers within minutes. That is what protocol demanded. That is what logic demanded. But none of that happened. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of normal hotel operations. A new tray of champagne appeared. The orchestra regained confidence. Guests pretended they had not watched a man like Felix Escobar get pinned to the floor by a woman carrying a tray minutes earlier. I waited for the silent signal from my team. A coded vibration. A pull-out order. Anything. Nothing came. Instead, a different message arrived. A short nod from the head butler, followed by words spoken softly enough to hide their weight. Mr. Escobar would like a word. Alone. My stomach tightened. This was not retaliation. This was something worse. Felix wanted to speak privately. Felix, who could have ordered his guards to crush me. Felix, who should have been furious, embarrassed, or out for revenge. But instead he seemed intrigued. I followed the butler through a secluded hallway into a lounge far from the ballroom noise. The lighting was dim, warm, too quiet for comfort. The walls were lined with velvet drapes, the kind that swallowed sound and secrets. Felix stood in the center of the room, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed enough to be deceptive. His eyes tracked me the moment I stepped inside. "Close the door," he said. The butler obeyed without raising his head, and then it was just the two of us. I remained near the exit, ready to attack or flee if needed. He noticed. "Do not look so tense," he murmured. "If I wanted you gone, you would not be standing." His tone held no threat. That somehow made it more unsettling. I kept my voice steady. "What do you want?" He studied me with a calm focus that felt surgical. The arrogance he had flaunted in the ballroom was gone. This was someone calculating, someone who analyzed people the way others read maps. "You move like someone who learned to stay invisible, yet tonight you chose not to," he said. "Why?" I forced a small shrug. "You cornered me." "I did, but that does not explain how you moved, or how you felt danger before I even raised my hands." I kept my face blank, but inside I knew he had seen far more than he should have. Felix Escobar was not just muscle and gold chains. He was observant, too observant. He paced around me slowly. I expected anger, intimidation, something loud. Instead, I got curiosity. "You are not a normal server. You can pretend, but your eyes give you away," he said softly. I stayed in character. "I am exactly what the uniform says." "No, you are something else." The silence between us tightened. He stopped pacing and faced me directly. "You know the hotel is monitored, not by management, not by law enforcement, by someone else." My pulse stilled in my veins. He was not talking about surveillance cameras or hotel security. He meant something deeper, something organized, something dangerous. I played dumb. "I do not know what you are talking about." He gave me a look that said he did not believe a single word. I have seen patterns for months. Same types of people. Same rotation. They stay 3 steps outside my orbit, but always close enough to watch. Government eyes. The kind that wait for a mistake, not proof. A cold weight settled beneath my ribs. My cover team. My operation. The watchers I trusted to stay hidden. Felix had noticed all of them. He lowered his voice. "Whatever you are doing here, it is bigger than you think, and it is going to collide with what controls me." Those words made everything inside me go still. "Controls you?" I asked. His jaw tightened. Not fear. Resentment. There's a man who believes he owns me. He has leverage I cannot break. His reach is wide. His influence is older than my entire empire. And if he saw what happened tonight, he will not stay silent. Every detail he described matched the exact target I had been hunting for years. The ghost in the dark world. The shadow my agency could never track down. The man who pulled strings from behind smoke and mirrors. My voice was quiet. "What kind of leverage?" Felix looked away. His walls rose again as if the answer itself could burn him. "He watches everything I do. Every deal. Every meeting. Every breath." I felt his eyes on me the moment your knee hit the floor by my ribs. The truth slammed through me with chilling clarity. The ballroom fight was not just a mistake. It was exposure. If the target saw me fight, if he recognized combat technique hidden under a hotel apron, then my cover was already cracking. I would be compromised. Maybe already was. My mind raced. I had a window of time. Small, narrow, rapidly closing. Felix stepped closer, reading my silence better than expected. "You understand, do you not?" He murmured. "Whoever you are, he will start looking for you now." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Then I need to finish what I came here for." He let out a short, humorless breath. "You do not even know the size of the storm you are walking into." Before I could respond, his phone rang. A simple tone. But the moment he saw the caller ID, his entire composure cracked. His shoulders stiffened. His face drained of color. His hand trembled just slightly around the device. He answered with his eyes lowered, almost like someone entering a confession booth. "Yes, I am here." A long silence followed. Whatever he was hearing, it was not good. His jaw locked. His eyes flicked toward me once, then away quickly, as if afraid someone on the other end could see through the speaker. "I understand," he finally said. "It will be handled." He hung up, exhaled slowly, and then looked at me with something close to urgency. "You need to leave this hotel right now." I stood my ground. "No." His expression darkened. "This is not optional." I lifted my chin. "It is for me." He stepped closer, voice low and intense. "You do not know who you are provoking. You do not know what he can do." I met his stare without blinking. "Then tell me." Felix clenched his teeth. The struggle inside him was obvious. Fear of the man on the phone. Confusion about who I was. And something else. Something like protectiveness he did not understand and could not justify. He shook his head slowly. "You're going to get yourself killed." I answered calmly. "The mission matters more than my safety." He stared at me for a long moment. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. "Then God help you, Catalea Boyd." Hearing my real name fall from his lips felt like a spark in a dark room. Somehow he already knew, or someone had told him, or someone was watching far more closely than I imagined. And as I walked out of that dim lounge, one truth pressed against my spine like a cold blade. The hidden power running the crime world had just seen me, and he never let his targets live for long. Catalea left Felix's private lounge with his warning echoing in her ears, but she didn't leave the hotel. She couldn't. The mission was shifting faster than any protocol could catch up with. If the mastermind truly had eyes inside the building, any hesitation could cost lives, including Felix's, despite the fact that he wasn't exactly innocent in all this. As she stepped into the dim hallway, the adrenaline from the ballroom fight finally thinned enough for her mind to sharpen. If Felix was being monitored, then the watchers had to be somewhere close enough to have seen her, studied her movements, compared them to old files. She moved through the staff corridors with normal server's pace, not the calculated precision of an undercover operative. She forced her breath to slow, her shoulders to relax, her steps to soften. Anyone watching couldn't afford to see her thinking. But inside, she was already dissecting everything. Surveillance patterns, positions, blind spots, reflections, elevation angles, signal noise. Within an hour, she found exactly what she feared. Felix wasn't the only one being watched. Someone was studying the watchers themselves. A second set of surveillance eyes. Cleaner, smarter, hidden in places only a trained infiltrator would use. Catalea slipped into maintenance wing, where old wiring closets ran colder than the rest of the hotel, and located the first clue, a microphone embedded inside the power conduit, seamlessly integrated as if installed during the hotel's original construction. Only a tiny flicker of alien frequency gave it away. She pulled out a small scanner disguised as a busted room key. A faint coded signal pulsed, recognizable enough to make her jaw tighten. She'd seen this encryption before. Years ago, on the device that detonated the explosion. She survived, and her brother didn't. The mastermind's signature. Her breath stilled. She swept the area again, finding more evidence. Low-frequency waveform recordings, relay points leading to an unseen communication channel, encrypted timestamps showing Felix's movements long before he ever noticed. She found a small transceiver taped behind a forgotten breaker box, one still warm to the touch. Someone was watching Felix right now. Probably had been for years. A shadow moved behind her. Catalea spun, hand already brushing the hidden blade in her utility apron, only to find Felix standing in the doorway, hands raised. "You move like someone who's been hunted," he murmured. "You move like someone still being hunted," she replied without turning her back to him. Felix exhaled tiredly, stepping fully into the room. The tiny space seemed too small for a Mafia boss and a covert operative pretending to be a waitress. "You wanted honesty," he said quietly. Here it is. He didn't sit, didn't try to intimidate her. He simply spoke, his voice carrying the weight of a man tired of cages he couldn't see but always felt. They won't keep me alive, he said. Not for loyalty, not for business, for leverage. Leverage? Catalea asked, already anticipating the worst. Felix hesitated. Then his eyes softened, something she hadn't thought possible after seeing him fight, like a cornered animal in the ballroom. They took someone from me, he said, years ago. Someone I care about more than anything. I've been complying ever since. Every order, every hand signal, every coded message. If I disobey, I never hear from them again. Catalea felt the words like a punch, not because she pitied him, but because she knew the exact brand of cruelty he described. She had lived through it too. She rarely shared anything, not even with superiors. But something in Felix's confession, in the erosion of his hardened exterior, stirred a truth she hadn't spoken in years. They killed my family, she said softly. All except me, and they didn't do it out of anger or necessity. They did it to send a message. Felix's gaze snapped to hers. Catalea continued. Same encryption, same surveillance patterns, same shadow pulling strings you don't see until it's too late. A silent understanding passed between them, an alliance neither of them wanted, forged from the same enemy's cruelty. She tucked the scanner away. We can't let them know you told me anything, or that I'm not just some humiliated waitress trying to keep her job. Felix nodded slowly. You want me to make it look like I scared you into obedience. It's the safest route, she replied, for both of us. Footsteps echoed outside, Felix's men. The tension shifted immediately. He straightened his posture, slipping back into the persona the underworld knew. Cold, calculating, feared. Catalea lowered her eyes, adjusting her apron like an intimidated staff member. The door opened. One of Felix's lieutenants, a sharp-eyed man who looked like he'd survived more stabbings and birthdays, glared at her with barely concealed contempt. Felix's voice dropped into a dangerous register. She works here now. Anyone who touches her answers to me. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Catalea saw it instantly. They weren't afraid of Felix. They were afraid of the unseen puppeteer controlling him. Felix signaled them away. When they left, he murmured just loud enough for the hallway microphones to pick up. Next time you embarrass me in front of my guests, you won't get another warning. He walked out with the authority of a man who must bark to survive the leash around his neck. Catalea followed moments later, slipping into the staff elevator. But danger found her in a different corridor. A rival enforcer, lean, sharp, and far too observant, blocked her path. His eyes narrowed as he studied her posture. I've seen that stance before, he said. Where did you learn to pivot before throwing a punch like that? Catalea froze internally. Too calculated a movement, too recognizable for a simple server. He stepped closer. You're no waitress. She was a breath away from eliminating him when... Enough. Felix's voice cut through the hallway. He stepped between them, placing a heavy hand on the rival's shoulder. She works for me, Felix said coldly. And unless you want your tongue cut out, you'll stop asking questions. The rival hesitated, but he backed off. Catalea met Felix's eyes for a flicker of a second, a silent exchange, a forced unity. When the danger dispersed, she retreated to the empty linen room, one of the few blind spots from the hidden surveillance. She reached for the last transceiver she had found earlier and scanned through its stored messages. A new one had arrived. She decoded it carefully. Her blood ran ice cold. Phase 1 begins. Assets must remain compliant. Movement starts at dawn. The mastermind wasn't just watching. They were preparing a major operation. Something big. Something imminent. And Catalea was now deep inside the web, one wrong move away from being caught in it forever. The coded message burned in Catalea's mind long after she left the linen room. Phase 1 begins. Movement starts at dawn. She didn't know what Phase 1 meant yet. But whatever it was, it wouldn't wait for her to gather courage. She needed Felix, not as an enemy, as an ally. But any show of alliance could get them both killed. So she found him where the Watchers wouldn't question Ray's voices. the service hallway behind the ballroom, where staff and criminals frequently clashed. Felix didn't look surprised when she stormed toward him. Their roles slipped back into place as smoothly as breathing. "You think you can bark orders at me?" she snapped. "Try walking away during a conversation with me again," he growled, matching her volume. To anyone passing by, it looked like a dangerous confrontation. But beneath their scowls, their eyes communicated something else entirely. Felix folded his arms. "Talk fast." She kept her voice low enough for only him to hear. "I found the relay point. The Watcher sent an activation message. Something happens at dawn." He didn't blink. "What else?" "I need access to the files they're using to control you." Felix scoffed loudly for effect. "I don't owe you anything." But under his breath, he murmured, "Meet me at the loading dock in 5 minutes. And act furious when you leave." Catalea shoved past him, letting the facade of hostility mask the quiet exchange between them. 5 minutes later, she slipped into the shadowed dock area. Felix was already waiting, his posture tense. He tossed her a drive disguised as a valet fob. "Encrypted files," he said. "I took these months ago. I've never opened them. Too risky." She plugged the fob into her handheld decryptor. The screen flickered, then unfolded a nightmare. Detailed profiles of every high-ranking guest visiting the Aurelius Hotel over the next 72 hours. Politicians, tech investors, CEOs, union leaders, people whose influence could move cities. The mastermind wasn't just growing stronger. He was building an empire. Catalea swallowed the rising dread. He's using the hotel to expand control. Extortion, recruitment, manipulation. All in one place. Felix nodded grimly. "And someone like me is the bait. I play host. I keep the fear in the room. I keep the targets compliant. They don't realize I'm trapped too." Her gaze snapped toward him. "Then we're stopping him tonight." Felix hesitated. "There's something else you need to see. Follow me." He took her through 2 service elevators, down an old maintenance corridor, and into a room she would never have guessed he owned. A rusted door hid a stairwell, leading into a forgotten underground space. When he finally unlocked the last barrier, the truth revealed itself. A warehouse tucked beneath the old district, dust-covered crates, steel shelves, evidence boards, maps, and documents no one should have access to. "This is mine," Felix said quietly. Hidden from him. Hidden from everyone. Catalea studied the room. Surveillance photos. Financial trails. Illicit agreements. Every piece of leverage the mastermind used to rule the underworld Felix had been collecting it. "You've been resisting him for years," she whispered. Felix leaned against a crate, looking older than she'd ever seen him. "I can't break free. Not alone. But I can slow him. Delay him. Distract him." Catalea paced the warehouse, scanning maps and blueprints. "You've been sabotaging his operations." "I've made it look like bad luck," Felix replied. "Or incompetence. Anything to keep him from tightening the leash." For the first time since meeting him, Catalea realized Felix wasn't a villain trapped by greed. He was a prisoner fighting his warden in secret. And now, she could finally fight alongside someone who understood the cost of defiance. "Then we start dismantling him," she said, quietly, piece by piece. Felix nodded. They began with the intermediaries, the corrupt messengers linking Felix to the mastermind, money launderers, informants, enforcers who owed their loyalty to fear rather than honor. Each takedown had to look accidental. A blown tire, a misfired weapon, a corrupted data file, a conveniently misplaced keycard. Catalea and Felix moved like shadows, her precision and his knowledge blending into lethal coordination. For hours, they erased trail after trail, cutting strings a mastermind used to keep Felix bound. But their success attracted suspicion. Felix's guards, now more alert than ever, began shadowing him, watching him, judging every order he gave. One guard in particular, a brutal man named Dante, watched Felix too closely. Every movement, every breath, as if already preparing to betray him. Catalea kept her distance, but Dante's gaze sharpened whenever she walked by. He whispered to the others, pointed toward Felix's office, mentioned the fight in the ballroom one too many times. It was only a matter of time before someone tried something reckless. It happened sooner than she expected. Late in the night, she slipped into a lower hallway and heard a scuffle, a sharp grunt, a metallic clatter, and a muffled curse. Felix! She ran. Dante had Felix cornered, a suppressed pistol hidden behind his coat. Felix fought him off, but another blow would have dropped him to his knees. Catalea didn't hesitate. She grabbed a broken broom handle from the cleaning cart and swung. The hit connected with Dante's wrist. The gun clattered across the floor. Felix lunged, slamming Dante against the wall, but it was Catalea who delivered the final strike, a precise blow to his jaw, knocking him unconscious. Felix turned to her, shaken. "You should have stayed hidden," he murmured. "And you should have," she replied, breathless, "chosen better friends." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Felix exhaled. "I underestimated you." She raised an eyebrow. "You think?" He shook his head. "No, I mean it. I haven't trusted anyone in years. Not since they took everything. But I trust you more than anyone else alive." His words felt like a turning point she hadn't asked for, but couldn't deny. Catalea knelt by Dante, searching his pockets for clues. Instead, she found something far more dangerous, a coded note. Her heart stopped as she read the message. A cipher she recognized instantly. A symbol burned into her memory. A name she hadn't spoken since the night her life fell apart. Her final missing link. The mastermind wasn't just connected to her past. He was the architect of it. Catalea rose slowly, notes shaking in her hands. "I know who he is now," she whispered, "and I'm ending this before sunrise." Felix's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then we finish it together." And as dawn crept closer, their dangerous alliance deepened, bound by shared scars and a single unbreakable goal: bring the mastermind down before he destroys everything. Felix didn't argue with her vow. He only nodded once, jaw tight, a silent recognition that sunrise might mean one of their deaths or both. They left the warehouse separately, weaving through opposite alleys so any watchers would see nothing unusual. But by the time Catalea reached the hotel's underground service corridor, the mission had already shifted from infiltration to war. The crumbling of the network began at 2:14 a.m. She and Felix simultaneously hit two separate financial channels, the digital veins that fed the mastermind's empire. He redirected coded accounts through a proxy server hidden behind a children's charity. Catalea infiltrated a dormant shell company that masked illegal shipments. Together, they shut them down in under 8 minutes. It should have taken 10 times longer. But desperation accelerates expertise. Within an hour, the underworld began to twitch with confusion. Encrypted chat rooms erupted with accusations. 2 syndicate leaders suspected each other of sabotage and froze their funds. A third turned paranoid, firing half his staff. A fourth vanished entirely. Chaos. Exactly what they needed. But the victory came at a cost. Felix kept his communication lines dead the entire time. No responses, no availability, no check-ins. To his puppeteer, that alone was a dangerous act of rebellion. Catalea watched him pace the dim warehouse office later that night. His phone silent on the table, vibrating every few minutes with ignored calls. Every buzz tightened the air. "You don't have to keep them off this long," she whispered. Felix laughed quietly, humorless. "If I turn the phone on now, they'll know I hesitated. If I wait until morning, they'll assume I'm dead. Better than enslaved." He didn't argue, but there was a shadow in his eyes she recognized, one born from years of forced obedience. He'd been resisting quietly, yes, but always from behind the bars of fear. Tonight, for the first time, he stood outside the cage. Catalea didn't say aloud, but she knew what that meant. The mastermind would retaliate soon. To confirm that theory, she infiltrated a private meeting on the 15th floor of the hotel, disguised as a night shift supervisor. The uniform was stiff, the badge borrowed, and the hairnet something she'd never forgive, but the disguise worked. The meeting room windows overlooked the city skyline, reflecting a dozen nervous men sitting around a polished table. Catalea kept her steps soft, pretending to replace a tray of drinks while angling her ear toward their whispers. "The boss is done with Cardenas. one man muttered. The final transfer happens at dawn. After that, he drew a finger across his throat. Catalea felt her pulse narrow. Felix was right. Sunrise was a deadline written in blood. But before she could slip away, a motion sensor at the door blinked red. Someone had noticed unauthorized activity. A second later, a security guard stepped inside, brows furrowing at her uniform. "Supervisor?" he asked. Catalea smiled lightly. "Mid-shift audit. Corporate orders." Unfortunately, he didn't buy it. His hand drifted toward the comm on his belt, and she moved. A silent strike to his throat to cut his voice. A pivot, a sweep, and she had him on the floor before anyone inside the meeting could turn. She pushed the tray against the door, wedging it shut long enough to sprint down the hallway. Behind her, alarmed voices shouted. Someone hit the emergency code. She didn't stop. She couldn't. By the time she reached the elevator, the security system was already escalating levels. Red lights washed the corridor. She dove into the staff's stairwell and took the steps 3 at a time. The mastermind had noticed her before, but now he was hunting. Meanwhile, Felix faced his own betrayal. He confronted Matteo, the advisor he had trusted since before his ascension into power. They met in the dim lighting of the warehouse's back room, walls lined with marked crates. Matteo stood stiffly, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You've been reporting on me," Felix said quietly. Matteo exhaled, tired, as though he'd been waiting years for this confrontation. "I warned you, Algif watches everything." I couldn't refuse him. "You could have told me," Felix murmured. "And I? No, I'm no martyr." Felix's jaw flexed. "Then what are you?" "Someone who wants to stay alive." Matteo stepped closer. "You should have obeyed him, Felix. That fight with the waitress." "Don't say her name," Felix snapped, though Matteo never used it. "Whoever she is, she endangered us both." But Felix didn't see danger when he looked at Catalea anymore. He saw survival, strategy, and yes, trust, something he once thought he'd lost the ability to feel. "Get out," Felix whispered, "before I decide I'm my own master." Matteo stiffened, but he left, and Felix understood for the first time how alone he truly was. By 4:05 a.m., hotel chaos erupted. Rival factions clashed in the parking lot outside, each convinced another had betrayed them. Gunshots cracked through the night. Screams echoed between walls of tinted glass. Hotel alarms blared while guests scrambled for evacuation. Catalea used the pandemonium to her advantage. The encrypted drive she needed, the final link between her past and the mastermind, was stored in a security vault beneath the building. Normally, the room was guarded by 2 men and a biometric lock. Tonight, the guards were outside arguing with their superior about the sudden turf war. Perfect. Catalea ducked behind a column, slipped into the vault, and cracked the lock using a stolen Pompad gel mold. Inside, rows of evidence glimmered in cold blue light. She found it, the drive marked with a symbol that had haunted her since childhood. Her breath hitched. The mastermind, the one responsible for the tragedy that shaped her life, the shadow that had followed her through every mission. This was the proof she needed. Footsteps thundered outside. She pocketed the drive and slipped through the back exit, heart pounding. Someone shouted her description over the radio. Too late. She raced into the smoke-filled corridor, turning right toward the staff wing, straight into Felix. He stared at her, breathing hard, disheveled from the faction war outside. "You got it." "Yes." "Then run." "I already told you," she whispered. "I don't run." His throat worked. "He's tightening the net. Surveillance drones are coming online. If he finds you, he won't." She stepped closer. "We're ending this. Tonight." Felix looked at her for a long moment. Fear, admiration, and something deeper flickering his eyes. Then he nodded. Side by side, they vanished into the smoke-filled corridors as the underworld devoured itself behind them. The mastermind had come closer than ever, and sunrise was only an hour away. They didn't have the luxury of retreat. The night was collapsing faster than either of them anticipated. Another major event, an exclusive international summit, was already set to begin in the hotel's grand ballroom within the hour. Diplomats, business magnates, and underworld figures alike were gathering under the same gilded ceiling. Perfect timing for the mastermind. Perfect cover for violence. Catalea had the encrypted drive inside a false wall panel in the staff archives, an improvised dead drop she could access later. As she slid the metal cover back into place, a prickling sensation crawled along her spine, the kind that came when someone's gaze pressed between her shoulder blades. She stood still, breathed evenly, and pretended not to notice. But she felt it, watched, tracked. She stepped out into the hallway. Felix met her in the service passage that led toward the ballroom level. Outwardly, he looked calm, leaning against a wall, arms crossed, blazer immaculate despite the chaos outside. But his eyes betrayed him. They were drawn tight, scanning everything around them, calculating threats with manic precision. "He won't wait much longer," he murmured. "I know." Catalea, his voice lowered. "If you disappear right now, you might still live." She shook her head once. "We didn't come this far to run." A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Felix saw it a second too late. The man stepped into view, dressed in the uniform of a senior hotel security officer. But his posture was wrong, too sharp, too controlled. His eyes were cold, predator calm. Catalea recognized him immediately. She'd seen him once. In a dossier. One of the mastermind's ghosts. Operatives who never existed on paper. He smiled without warmth. "You have something that doesn't belong to you," he said. "Hand over the drive." Catalea didn't blink. "Not happening." "Then we do this the other way." He lunged. Felix tried to intercept, but the agent slammed him into the wall with terrifying strength. Felix collapsed, breathless. Catalea stepped between them before the agent could finish him. The corridor exploded into motion, punches, sharp angles, ruthless efficiency. He was trained like she was. Precision, economy, lethal intent. Whoever the mastermind was sending now weren't just cleaners. They were hunters. A blade flashed. She dodged barely, feeling it slice fabric along her ribs. She countered, elbow, knee, strike. The agent staggered but didn't fall. He recovered instantly and drove her backward toward a metal cart. She used the momentum, stepped onto the cart, kicked off it, spun midair. Her heel cracked against his jaw. He fell but not down. He fell forward, tackling her into the wall. She gritted her teeth as his hand crushed her wrist, trying to force her submission. "You can't protect him," he hissed. "You can't protect anyone. Give me the drive. Come take it." She drove her knee upward. The agent faltered, grip loosening, and she slid free, just enough to strike 3 times in rapid succession. Jaw, throat, temple. He hit the ground, stunned but still conscious. She didn't wait for him to rise. "Felix, move!" she gasped. They ran, just as alarms began to blare down the hall. The ballroom was already glowing with gold chandeliers and murmuring crowds. Guests walked in unaware that bombs, bullets, and treachery hovered in the walls around them. Felix stopped dead as they reached the upper balcony overlooking the room, his face drained of color. "What?" Catalea demanded. He pointed, hidden beneath the decorative panels, just subtle enough to go unnoticed by anyone else, were small black devices tucked behind floor arrangements, chandeliers, and pillar seams. Not explosives. Not exactly. They were trigger devices, remote control detonation units, and auditory disruptors, the kind used to cause panic or stampede. They weren't meant to kill everyone. Just him. Publicly. Humiliatingly. "It's a stage collapse," Felix whispered. "They wanted me walking blind. And make your death look like an accident." He nodded once, jaw locking. "He wants the world to watch me fall." Catalea grabbed his wrist. "Not today." She scanned the ballroom, calculating pathways, guard patterns, timing. "We can still stop this." He swallowed. "How?" "You stall. I sabotage." They split. Felix descended the grand staircase, blending among guests with a practiced smile. Only a trained eye could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at the ceiling, the way his jaw clenched whenever a guard drifted too close. Catalea moved along the back corridors behind the ballroom walls, slipping between caterers and sound technicians, disarming hidden triggers one by one. Her hands moved fast, snapping wires, destroying circuits, disabling acoustic failsafes. Every device she deactivated made her heartbeat slow, just slightly, but the sense of being watched, it never left. She had just disabled the last trigger when she heard a voice behind her. Cute trick. She spun. The same agent from the corridor, bloody lip, bruised jaw, but fully functional, stood in the doorway. Two more disguised operatives flanked him, each armed with concealed pistols. "You should have stayed down," she said. He smiled. "You should have stayed dead." They rushed her. She ducked behind a lighting tower as bullets ripped through the fabric beside her. Guests in the ballroom heard nothing. Soundproof walls did their job too well. But Felix had seen the glimmer of muzzle flashes. He reacted instantly, vaulting over a table. He tore a champagne bucket from a waiter's tray and hurled it at the disguised gunman closest to Catalea's wall. The blow broke the man's aim long enough for Catalea to roll out and strike another attacker in the throat. The final operative, the agent himself, grabbed her hair, yanking her backward. She slammed her elbow into his ribs, pivoted, and twisted his wrist until the gun clattered onto the floor. They grappled violently, crashing into equipment cases. "You can't win," he growled. "I don't need to win," she hissed. "I just need answers." She slammed him into the wall. Hard. The impact knocked the wind and the arrogance out of him. Felix burst through the side door, ready to help, but Catalea already had the agent pinned, her forearm crushing his throat. "Where is he?" she demanded. "The mastermind, where is he hiding?" The agent coughed, choking, eyes bulging. She loosened just enough for him to speak. "You'll never reach him," he rasped. "Try me." His lips curled with painful defiance. "Fine. He's offshore. Private island. South Quadrant. He calls it the Glass Citadel." Felix stiffened. "I've heard of that place." The agent smirked faintly. "Then you know no one leaves it alive." Catalea pressed harder. "Coordinates." He sputtered. 1329 North 4, 8 West. She memorized them in a heartbeat. Then the agent's body went slack, cyanide capsule clenched between his teeth, already dissolving. Felix swore under his breath. Catalea stood slowly, pulse steady even as the ballroom erupted into confused panic around them. She met Felix's eyes. "We know where he is now," she said. Felix took a breath. "That means it ends," she whispered, "at the Glass Citadel, and together." Without waiting for sunrise, they slipped into the shadows, one step closer to the man pulling every string. The night air tasted like steel and storm as Catalea and Felix left the Aurelius Hotel behind them. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. The island's coordinates sat between them like a loaded weapon, both a destination and a death sentence. Felix finally broke the silence. "Once we step onto that island, there's no turning back." Catalea zipped her jacket, eyes fixed ahead. "Good. I'm tired of turning back." They returned to Felix's hidden warehouse while the sky remained bruised with the last stretch of night. Felix's loyal men were waiting, those who had broken their ties to the mastermind days before. Some were injured, some shaken, but all had chosen to stand with him. Catalea spread out the intel across the table. Maps of the island, intercepted messages, financial ledgers, hack schematics, and an encrypted drive containing every piece of the network they had dismantled. "This," she said, tapping the drive, "is enough to burn him down in every country he's ever touched." "And enough to get us killed," Felix replied. Catalea offered a tight smile. "Then we'll just have to be faster." They prepared in silence after that, checking gear, swapping weapons, memorizing escape routes. Felix studied her for a moment, the way she moved, the focus in her eyes. "Are you scared?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she answered without hesitating. "And ready." The Glass Citadel rose out of the water, like a black mirror sharpened into a fortress. High walls circled the island, interrupted by guard towers and camera spires. Everything gleamed with a cold, antiseptic shine. Perfectly controlled, perfectly watched. They arrived in a stolen boat, gliding beneath the radar blind spot Felix had told her about. Once ashore, the world turned silent. Not peaceful, controlled, oppressive. Every path was lined with lenses that followed nothing but waited for anything. Catalea felt her heartbeat slow to a tactical rhythm. "This is it," she whispered. Felix nodded. "Stay close." They entered a service tunnel hidden below the main structure. The corridor stretched long and sterile, lit by unblinking overhead lights. Their footsteps echoed faintly against steel floors. As they moved deeper, security consoles hummed with life. Screens flickered with surveillance feeds. Every hallway, every room, every occupied bed in the living quarters. The mastermind watched everything. Catalea paused at control station and plugged in the encrypted drive. Felix tensed. "What are you doing?" "Buying us time," she said, fingers flying across the interface, looping the cameras, scrambling motion alerts. "You sure you can do that?" She looked at him. "I'm sure we don't have another option." The system flickered once, twice, then stabilized. "We're ghosts," she said. Felix exhaled. "Then let's haunt him." The mastermind waited for them in his command suite. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a politician. Tailored suit, silver tie, gentle eyes that had a viper's mind. The room behind him glowed with panoramic screens displaying global banking networks, intelligence channels, and encrypted communications. "I knew you'd come eventually," he told Catalea. "You are far too sentimental to let this go." Felix stepped forward. "You used me." The mastermind lifted a brow. "I guided you. You became powerful because of me." "You controlled me," Felix said. "You threatened what I loved." "And look how obedient that made you," the mastermind answered calmly. "Fear is the most reliable chain." He turned to Catalea. "And you," he said softly, "you lost far more to me than Felix ever did. Your brother, your home, your future. I needed leverage. You were simply available." Catalea didn't flinch, though the mention of her past struck like a blade. "You destroyed my life to build your empire," she said. "Now you're going to watch it fall." He smiled at her. "Or you can step away. Leave Felix. Leave the mission. I can give you a new identity, a new life, untouched." Felix stiffened, but Catalea didn't break eye contact. "You want me quiet," she said, "which means you're scared." "I'm offering survival." "No," she said coldly. "You're offering surrender." She pressed a small trigger device clipped beneath her sleeve. The mastermind screens exploded into motion as every file on the encrypted drive, bank accounts, blackmail recordings, hit orders, trafficking ledgers, hidden alliances, began streaming directly to international law enforcement networks, intelligence agencies, and global press outlets. The mastermind lunged toward the console. "What have you done?" Catalea stepped between him and the screens. "Ended you." He snarled, reaching for a hidden gun beneath his desk, but Felix slammed him back. Guards burst into the room, weapons raised. Felix's loyal men intercepted them at the door, steel clashing with steel. Shouts echoed across the polished floor. Catalea engaged the nearest guard, spinning under his grab, disarming him, and knocking him unconscious in 3 precise movements. Felix fought beside her, brutal and efficient, fueled by years of captivity and anger. The mastermind broke free and sprinted toward the exit. Catalea chased him through the corridor, Felix close behind. The mastermind reached the security gate and tried to override the lock. His hands shook. His control, his entire empire, was slipping away. Felix caught him first, slamming him against a reinforced wall. "You don't get to run," Felix growled. The mastermind tried to speak, but Felix tightened his grip. Catalea stepped forward. "This ends here," she said. With the last override she had planted, she locked down the entire facility. Sirens wailed in the distance. Coast Guards, federal response teams, and international task forces converging on the island. The mastermind sagged in Felix's grip, defeat crawling across his face. "You've doomed us all," he whispered. "No," Catalea replied. "We saved them from you." The doors burst open. Flashlights, shouts, tactical boots on steel flooring. Catalea stepped back as agents stormed the hallway. Felix released the mastermind, letting law enforcement take him. Sirens grew louder. The world shifted from red alert chaos to the controlled security of an operation reclaimed. Felix turned toward her. "You did it," he said quietly. She shook her head. "We did." The facility around them crackled with static as the broadcast completed. The mastermind's empire was collapsing in real time. And for the first time since this all began, dawn didn't feel like a threat. It felt like freedom. The last siren faded into the night as Felix was escorted away, his usual composed arrogance stripped away like the walls of a crumbling fortress. The mastermind behind the city's shadowed underworld, once untouchable, was now confined to the sterile certainty of a holding cell. For the first time in years, Felix's leverage, the network he commanded, the threats he wielded, was gone. The streets no longer whispered his name with fear. The power that had defined him had evaporated. Catalea stood just beyond the police tape, the cool night air brushing against her face, and allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible exhale. She thought back to the night it all began, a night that had seemed insignificant at the time. A simple undercover assignment, an ordinary cover story, a single choice that would spiral into a chain of events neither she nor Felix could have anticipated. Her mind wandered across the months of tension, of narrow escapes, of calculations and instincts finely honed. Every lie she had told, every carefully placed word, had brought them here. And yet, despite the chaos, she had learned more about herself than she had expected. Authorities had their questions ready, but Catalea offered only the essentials. She answered with precision, measured truth, and nothing more. Details of methods, contacts, or the agency's internal operations were carefully shielded behind a mask of calm professionalism. They had the evidence they needed. She had no desire to complicate it further. The law would handle the rest. Meanwhile, Felix began the painstaking work of rebuilding his life. Not as a criminal overlord, not as a name whispered with fear, but as a man confronted with the weight of his own choices. The first few days were awkward, even painful. He walked streets he once owned with cautious steps, recalibrating his instincts. Decisions that once revolved around intimidation now required reflection. He felt the foreign thrill of freedom untainted by manipulation. Eventually, their paths converged in private, a quiet room away from the reporters, the cameras, the curious onlookers. No words about victories or defeats, no recounting of schemes or near misses. Instead, they shared a moment of acknowledgement, a subtle nod to the journey that had changed everything. Felix's eyes, often guarded and unreadable, softened as he spoke with rare sincerity. "You saved more than my life," he said quietly. "You saved my future." Catalea accepted the thanks with a reserved smile. There was no need for grandeur. The acknowledgement was enough. She did not return immediately to her old agency, not yet. For the first time in years, she could chart her own course, untethered from protocols, missions, and invisible chains. The idea of taking control of her path felt thrilling, daunting, and strangely empowering all at once. Felix, sensing the shift, hinted at possibilities beyond the shadows. "I might try something legitimate," he said with a wry grin, a ghost of his old confidence slipping into a new mold. "No networks, no violence, just business. Maybe even something that makes a difference." Catalea raised an eyebrow, curious, but said nothing. Some things were better watched unfold. Before parting ways, she returned to the hotel one last time, the place that had witnessed so many confrontations, so many revelations. She walked the familiar halls, remembered the precise moment she had stood her ground, and how a single act of defiance had disrupted an entire conspiracy. The echoes of that night lingered in the corners of the empty lobby, a silent testament to courage under pressure. It struck her that a simple choice, standing up to a man who underestimated her, had toppled a chain of power that seemed unbreakable. A fight between a boss and a waitress had exposed a network that thrived in shadows. And in that exposure lay not only justice, but the unanticipated chance for rebirth. She paused at the grand entrance, her hand resting lightly on the polished handle of the door. The city lay beyond, full of unknowns, full of opportunities. She let her gaze linger on the streets below, reflecting on how far she had come and how much the journey had taught her about herself, about courage, about consequence. Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile as she spoke her final words heavy with the weight of all that had transpired. He picked a fight with a waitress. He found an assassin instead. And with that, she stepped into the night, leaving behind the shadows, the schemes, and the chaos. Ahead was nothing but possibility, a new beginning waiting to be claimed.